There's been no bigger enemy to Gamergate 2 than itself, because every time we get a W, a studio closing down, us being correct about what's going on behind the scenes, whatever happens with a game that we know is going to flop turns out being a flop, there's always something else that happens to immediately put us right back at square one, reporting on false information, labeling certain games are woke when they're not, a la Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and of course, the figurehead of it all, Grummz, taking L after L with bad take after bad take, and not doing the bare minimum of research like he recently did with the Elder Scrolls lead designers on X. So welcome back to Words of Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idle, and yes, for those of you guys that haven't seen it, these are the leads of the upcoming Elder Scrolls 6 game. Now, I get this might be jarring for some of you if you don't know your gaming history, but as many were quick to point out, these gals have been with Bethesda since the early days. Some of them as far back as the original Oblivion, Fallout 3, Fallout 4, so on and so forth. Needless to say, at least in my opinion, they have more than proven their work and more than proven their ability to actually make good games and make good quality products within Bethesda and within gaming as a whole. But, that's not what our boy Grummz had to say. So before we get into that, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I'm a nerdy news channel. I cover nerdy news nearly every day. And yes, what did the self-proclaimed leader of Gamergate, well, I don't know if it's self-proclaimed, to be fair. That's just sort of the title that was thrust on him because people have no idea how to choose a functional leader that you can actually rally behind that isn't so far up their own ass. But regardless, what did he have to say? Well, this right here. Elder Scrolls 6 leads. Odds on if they're woke skulls or not? It may not be fair, but pattern recognition and years of DEI have made gamers very cynical. AAA has bashed gamers and injected stuff into their games for so long that gamers are going to default to assume the worst. And they're not wrong. At this point, AAA needs to prove themselves, and this is the situation they've created. I mean, on the surface, that sounds like a fair statement, but you're a game dev, or at least you claim to be a game dev, and you're a game dev from around the same time that these folks started at Bethesda. I mean, you want to talk about needing to prove themselves. I kind of feel like they have proven themselves with a myriad of releases that are looked upon with fondness and love. I mean, at some point, the tip top of Bethesda's works. I mean, again, we're talking Oblivion, Skyrim, Fallout 3. I don't think it's fair to say AAA needs to prove itself in regards to people that have proven themselves. And don't get me wrong, like, yes, obviously there are people that used to be super cool that of course did go off onto the, the woke train and they became, shadows of their former selves. I mean, look at David Javi, for example. Who would have thought the guy that created God of War is now, I mean, I feel like the word lolcow is too nice, but even so, when you're trying to make mountains out of molehills, when you're trying to start up controversy, it begs the question, do you actually care? Are you just doing this to farm Twitter engagement? Especially when nearly everybody is against you on this. I mean, you could have just taken 5 seconds to Google search these broads, and then you'd avoided this whole controversy. But no, instead, you got nearly the entirety of the quote-unquote anti-woke movement, those who were involved in Gamergate 2, calling you out because, again, you just didn't do the bare minimum of research. For example, we got Smash JT here saying, a lot of folks are tagging me, asking me my thoughts on the picture, so instead of responding to each individually, I'll just say it here. As far as I can tell, these employees are fantastic, talented, and have shown no signs of being wokies outside of the obvious modern appearances. I think there's an important moment to remember that we can't judge every book by its cover when it comes to game studios. During my time in the industry working at Sony, this was actually a normal style for many folks. It didn't necessarily mean that every single person with wacky colored hair and nose rings was a crazed lunatic wokie. In fact, I could even argue the Marxist co-opted the look and took it over, similar to gays in the rainbow back in the 90s. The TLDR is it's important to research the individuals before slamming them. There are a lot of good people still in the industry. Not everyone sucks. I'm hopeful gaming gets back to the fun, relaxed counterculture of yesteryear, free of politics and activists using gaming as a Trojan horse for their rhetoric. I think Smash hit the nail on the head. I mean, first of all, Smash is one of the ones that people who are uneducated about him and just believe what Airbad would say, he's one of the ones that people would assume would be the first to jump on this and call them woke and make content on them or whatever. But no, Smash did what I recommended Grummz do, just take a moment to Google who these are. Or maybe he already knew, for all I know. I'm not entirely sure, but the fact of the matter is, this is a very fair and balanced take. I think it's a take that the vast majority of us have been having for, I mean, at least in my opinion, since the original Gamergate, back in Gamergate 1, you can't just, when everything looks like a nail, that means you're the hammer. And let's be real, it's not good to be the hammer, at least not in all instances. So yeah, a lot of people came at him, they asked his thoughts, he gave a good, honest thought on it, and that's that level of nuance that so many of us seem to forget in the modern days, in the zeitgeist of Gamergate 2, is that, yeah, some folks just dye their hair. I mean, the boy does. I don't naturally have black hair. I'm a ginger. So yeah, some folks just, they dye their hair. Now, Bethesda, of course, is not exempt from being quote-unquote woke. We've seen some of the things they've done, like in Fallout 76, Starfield, things to that effect. I don't know if these gals worked on either of those games. I didn't see it when I did a cursory glance at their resume. But again, I was also looking at the older stuff they did because I was surprised at how far back they went into Bethesda. And Bethesda, it's a decently sized company. Last I checked, they have between 150 to 200 employees. That's still leaps and bounds smaller than, Ubisoft, but, I guess that's a decent size. It definitely makes sense as to why they're able to crank the games out at the rate they are. Really, when it comes to Bethesda, what most people worry about isn't whether or not they're going to be quote-unquote woke. It's are they going to function? Because, people use Bethesda as a verb for game glitches for a reason. But yeah, no, we've got a lot to talk about in the gaming industry and a lot to complain about. We don't need to find issues where there's nothing. I mean, take a look at the recent Black Panther game. That whole studio was shut down and the game shuttered after it brought on the gal that famously stated that she doesn't like working with white people who used to work with Sweet Baby Inc. This is something worth talking about. You really can't conflate what's being said about the Elder Scrolls stuff with something like that, which is actual news, and in my opinion, actual dub for Gamergate 2, for the gaming community. But instead of taking that dub, instead of being like, look, this is what you get, because we all know good goddamn well that Black Panther game wasn't going to sell anyway. But no, instead, now we have to conflate it and look like a bunch of morons, because we got, again, the de facto leader of Gamergate 2 out here, Grummz, making the rest of us look bad, or at least that was my worry. But thankfully, the vast majority of folks, again, regardless of the side, have stood against him. For example, take a look at this. Imagine someone like Grummz being in the industry for as long as he has, yet missed the memo on what other games these women have worked on. Nah, let's just assume they're DEI hires. Instead of taking 5 seconds to Google, you just follow which way the wind is blowing. Twat. But the problem is, for every individual who's calling Grummz out and saying, dude, this is insane, you've got a myriad of people agreeing with him based on the merit of, A, he is Grummz, and in their mind, he can do no wrong, but also, once again, they are hammers, and everything else looks like nails. So they're just going to look at this photo, they're going to look at the dyed hair, and they're going to agree with him. I mean, just take a look at some of these responses. Type A, Type B incoming. Once a woke piece of shit, always a woke piece of shit. They all look the same. Haha, Elder Scrolls gonna suck ass. But thankfully, you do have individuals that are calling this out, individuals I've never heard of, and frankly, I don't know what side they're on when it comes to Gamergate or their political affiliations. It's just nice to see common sense. For example, 2 of these people have been shown working on Oblivion back in the day. Bro, stop with this shit. And lo and behold, look at the photo evidence. I mean, I wouldn't say either of them were exactly pretty before, even when their hair wasn't dyed. In fact, that first girl does look like she's got herself a bit of the dye job going on. But then you got One-Eyed Jack Gaming here. One-Eyed Jack Gaming, I think, encapsulates this problem as a whole, because he's got a very, what seems like nuanced and balanced take on the surface, but when you break it down, you realize it's just the same sort of anti-woke Gamergate 2 rhetoric that offers no substance. Grummz' comment here is exactly the same sentiment I replied with on Legacy Killa HD's post. Again, I say, these specific 3 women may not be DEI injectors, however, you cannot blame gamers for recognizing the patterns of appearance when they frequently accompany certain patterns of behavior. We have been explaining this and exposing the exact scenario since Gamergate. There's no amount of gaslighting that's going to force me to back down from this position. There are 4 lights. Again, people want to talk about pattern recognition. Oh, we've seen this before, so it makes sense for gamers to jump to this conclusion. No! No, it frickin' doesn't. Because by that same logic, hey, guess what? There's some crazies out there on the MAGA side. Now, is that the vast majority of them? I would say no. However, there's some crazy-ass mofos on the MAGA side that make all Republicans, conservatives, MAGA voters, Trump supporters, whatever you want to say, look like they're crazies, that they're all lumped in with the same category. And that's what gives the left license to make these generalized stereotypes. I mean, if you were so tired of Alyssa Mercanti and Airfad and Khalif Adams and all these other individuals treating you like something you're not, calling you a racist, calling you a homophobe, calling you misogynistic, I mean, are they wrong to do so? Yes, absolutely. Why? Because they're painting with a broad brush because of a spectrum of behavior from a few others. So no, I'm sorry, I don't think it makes sense to use the, well, it's pattern recognition argument, when right now the actual pattern says otherwise, that these 3 ladies have done immense work on some of the most beloved games in Bethesda's history, but because you want to fall back on your same anti-woke talking points, it's easy to paint with that broad brush and sound like you're being insightful. You're absolutely not. all in all, gaming controversies as of late have been getting less and less, and that's a good thing. I mean, I like to think that means that we are on the road back to normal. Controversies now have been less and less about things being quote-unquote woke and more about, hey, is Game Pass cannibalizing gaming? Look at the sales for Doom the Dark Ages. Now, do I think Game Pass is cannibalizing gaming? No, good games are always going to sell. Look at, again, Oblivion, Expedition 33, Stalker 2, things that maybe, Doom Dark Ages shouldn't have been $70 and 15 hours long, but I digress. The fact of the matter is, there's a lot of gaming news, and so much of it lately seems to finally be back to basics, back to the development cycles, the cost, whether or not the gamers are actually being listened to, aside from the ideological stuff. Now, there's always going to be some, tangential, woke thing to fight, or something that's agenda-driven that needs to be called out. But the narrative is shifting. Gamergate, in a way, Gamergate 2 specifically, at least it seems, has been working. There's been so much more discussion over the last several months about more in-depth issues plaguing gaming, aside from, oh, does this game have a black lesbian in it? And frankly, I think that's a good thing. That means we're accomplishing our mission. But then you've got individuals like Grummz who have a lot of reach, and can say so little with so much that people are just going to fawn over because, again, they look at him as some sort of enlightened savior of gaming, that it stifles anything and everything that is productive. I mean, take a look at the most recent episodes of SNH when we talk about Marathon or any of these other games that are coming out. The word woke doesn't even come up. We're talking about the idea of, when Marathon had the assets stolen, that art stolen and put in the game, and they acknowledged, that Bungie acknowledged, yeah, that happened. We did have a rogue artist do that. Okay, now we're talking about the behind the scenes. Was it a rogue artist? Are you trying to save face? How are you going to compensate the gal? Things to that effect. That is all issues plaguing the gaming industry that need discussed and need to be brought to light, and at no point was it ideological left or right. I mean, it's a conversation you think anyone should be able to have, regardless of what side they fall on. So the fact of the matter is, Gamergate 2, or at least a conversation in the gaming zeitgeist about the future of gaming, is going the right direction. But you can't take moments like this where Grummz says ridiculous shit and hand wave it or sweep it away because the game, because of his reputation or because it meets your ideological factors or whatever it may be. Call out those that say the ridiculous shit when they say it, and then talk about what actually matters. And guess what? Sometimes what actually matters is going to be quote-unquote woke stuff, is going to be ideological driven stuff. But I think it's a good thing that we're seeing less and less of that, and which is why we need to actually move forward and continue expanding the conversation towards other things happening in the gaming industry, so that we can just get back the hobby and the medium we loved. Very similar to what Smash said in his initial post. But these are just my opinions. Let me know yours in the comments down below, or let me know on X, where you can find me at Bolt the Word. And please just subscribe. I'm a nerdy news channel. I cover nerdy news nearly every day. Not always about what's going on in the gaming industry, but anime, movies, music, Magic the Gathering, you name it. Check me out on Instagram at wordsofparadise_Leon and become a member. For $4.99 a month, you can join the Discord, choose the articles we go over on a day-to-day basis, choose the videos we react to on the Friday night live streams, and of course, get involved with over 180 other vital idols. We are a bright, beautiful, glowing, vibrant community that I cannot wait to go even further, because we do care about diversity. Only one kind of diversity of thought. That's interesting to you. Join the Discord, hit subscribe. Until next time, it's all here in the Nerdosphere. This has been Words of Paradise.